Hey guys, so today we're going to take a look at Maxx and we're going to look at this very analytically and focus on that. So I guess the end result is I'll probably make a spreadsheet, unironically, to just show how good Maxx really is, alright? So that'll probably be a later video, but for now we'll just look at situations where Maxi is either in disadvantage or advantage, and we're going to look at a multitude of these situations, but I don't really have visuals for this, so sorry about that, guys. But so first things first is people always complain, my opponent has this full end board, and then they drop Maxi on me going second. Alright, so let's analyze that. So first off, before Maxi is dropped, your opponent would have to make their entire end board, correct? So that's step one, and that means you likely have not interacted with your opponent, meaning you were at 6 cards. And as always, we should always mention that you have 5 cards that blatantly hard counter Maxi, and they're just, in general, good cards to have in your deck anyways. So we have 3 of Ash Blossom, 2 of Cult By. Even if Maxi were banned, like this hand trap lineup, with like double Cult By and triple Ash Blossom Joy Spring, it's still overall a good hand trap lineup, and most decks are affected by Ash Blossom and Joy Spring in some way, and it will usually trade and hinder your opponent pretty much no matter what. Except with like certain cases, like if you time it wrong and your opponent just resolves Branded Fusion, and you should have just saved it for Branded Fusion, but we won't worry about that too much. So first off, let's only account for Maxi here and not any other hand traps your opponent might have. Then if we look at it that way, your opponent has 3 extenders and then like 1 starter or something like that. So they have nearly all gas in their hand. But if we look at it in another way, if our opponent has only Maxi in hand, and then, well, not just Maxi in hand, but Maxi in hand, and then other hand traps like Nibiru, Droll, Ash Blossom, Called By, whatever, then the scope of their end board, I guess, well, the strength of their end board is much smaller, you know? It's not as strong as like a 2-card combo or 3-card combo, because the more cards you utilize from your hand to start with, it usually results in a stronger end board, of course. Except with certain degenerate 1-card combos that use like certain garnets and stuff. Auroradon. Anyway, that aside, Maxi is completely bricking your opponent right now, essentially on the first turn. So if you were to, for example, drop an Ash Blossom and Joy Spring on, let's say, their Auroradon, then all your opponent has on you is a Maxi to resolve. And then after that, of course, you have to consider what does your opponent actually main deck in terms of hand traps, because any going second cards they draw are completely useless. Any extenders or starters they draw can be potentially useless, especially if you have a lethal in this turn. All of those things are completely true. And in the example I just gave, you have 5 hand cards still remaining after accounting for just using Ash Blossom and Joy Spring on your opponent once, right? So if you just drop an Ash Blossom Joy Spring, you are at 5 cards. Your opponent is likely just, they have only Maxi, and then they have just raw gas that they can't use. Like, I don't know, maybe for example they have Nemesis Corridor or something, because yeah, people that play Auroradon play that too. Well, anyway, now all you have to do is play through like what they draw off of Maxi. Now the question we need to ask here is, how many cards does our opponent play against Maxi? Because, or play with Maxi, like how many hand traps? If our opponent plays, for example, Infinite Impermanence, then Infinite Impermanence, every single Infinite Impermanence they draw is pretty useless. That is because they still ended with likely Auroradon not on the field actually, so they just have the Auroradon tokens in the example I just gave. So Infinite Impermanence is not a card they can activate, and Ash Blossom Joy Spring even if they draw into all three, they can only activate one, and you have 5 cards in hand to not only break through their like, well, what is it, like 2 tokens on their field, but to also get lethal through those 2 tokens with piss low stats. So that's all you have to do, realistically. And if you want to play around some hand traps, there's like the possibility of making like Apollosa. It doesn't have to be that early, because the odds of drawing into like a 1 of Nibiru, of course, is pretty small, even off of Maxi, if you have like 40 cards, right? So let's say, of course, you have like 35-ish, 34-ish cards left in deck. Kind of depends how it goes. You activate like a Maxi, so then like it's 1 in 35, 1 in 34, 1 in 33, 1 in 32. So it would happen over and over again, but that's the likelihood of drawing Nibiru if you haven't already had Nibiru to start, or if you haven't drawn into Nibiru yet. That's kind of how it would go for drawing Nibiru. So, well, you can expect that there's like about a 50% chance, for example, that your opponent has drawn Nibiru if they have it as a 1 of, if you went through like half of their deck that's available. So like with 35, let's say about 17 summons. If you do 17 summons, there's about a 50% chance your opponent draws a Nibiru, just for example. And Nibiru, of course, is one of the best payoffs for Maxi in general. But I mean, there's counterplay to it in the sense that there are decks that can summon something that can deal with Nibiru before 5 summons. For example, with Tyr, you have Rukalos. So there's that going, right? And then, aside from that, there is being able to go into, let's say, I don't know, any monster negate, any like way to negate Nibiru, and you're okay. And there's also the fact that here your opponent won't be able to recover that well, because who runs more than 1 Auroradon? And also there's a good chance they just draw the O-Lion, I guess. So they won't be able to actually do their combo, for example. And I guess like it does matter what like hand trap lineup they have. Like Droll and Lockbird, after a certain point, you're likely to have resolved all your searches and you're just like doing all your special summons. There are a lot of decks like that as well, so drawing a Droll, not like necessarily the best, could take a while. But going back a bit further, assuming let's say you have nothing for what your opponent's doing here, then like if they drop Maxi, you already lost anyways. Like let's say your opponent like has Danglong, Baron de Flor, like the Yangzing back row, and then they also have the other Omni Negate, the Zephyr one, and they have like Warlord Savage. You were going to lose, my guy, unless you had like Sphere Mode in hand. So their Maxi is not relevant. It's just the fact that you don't have Sphere Mode, for example, that's relevant. But if you did have Sphere Mode and then they drop Maxi on you, honestly, you can just pass. Like, yeah, what are they going to do about it? Beat you down with the Winged Dragon of Ra? Actually, I guess they could do that. Well, as long as your opponent's not playing Winged Dragon of Ra, there's no way you like lose next turn, because your opponent, if they did an Auroradon line, they have like no gas and generally can't do anything after they finish their Auroradon line. And right now, people are playing like Auroradon with cash, and as it happens, yeah, but let's just assume they do like Fenrir, add Fenrir, and then they do special summon Ascendant of Thunder. Then they would just have the Sphere Mode, and they can't summon their other Fenrir that they should have in hand from like turn 1. Nothing they can do. Cool, I guess. So Maxi wasn't really the determinative factor in like the majority. of games. So usually what makes Maxi impactful is if they draw like hand traps earlier, which can happen sometimes, but it's honestly not. It's already not in your opponent's favor, I guess, if you're playing like triple Ash and double called by for Maxi to resolve in the first place. But even if it does resolve, it still then needs to get the hand traps, right? So in the case of going second and you break the board, of course, assuming you don't have lethal, that's where Maxi does the best, because now your opponent usually will have resources to clap back with. So, like, for example, if we have Sprite and they have no cards in hand, and then, like, they full combo, drop all their stuff on you, and then boom, activate Maxi, then you have to play through, like, the board and Maxi in theory, but what is Maxi realistically going to draw for your opponent? It's mostly going to be engine. The majority is usually like engine cards, and engine cards are not usually activatable on your opponent's turn. So it's just a matter of if they draw hand traps or not, and if they do draw hand traps, a lot of the hand traps actually that people are playing right now are not activatable, but they have so much value that you can't really give them up. So Ash Blossom and Joe Spring also like deals with Maxi, if you need to deal with Maxi, of course, right? Because in general, if you're going first, you don't want to give your opponent like a lot of cards to break through your board and whatnot. But we'll go over that in a bit. So if we like draw Ash Blossom, Joe Spring 3 times, we can only activate it once anyways. If we draw, of course, you're running 3 Maxi if you're running Maxi typically. You're drawing into more Maxis, which are like in general useless cards after a certain point, you know. If Maxi's already going, it doesn't really do a whole lot for you. So the minimum, like, I guess, it's that your opponent is playing Ash, Blossom, and Joe Spring. There are like a lot of times where people just play Ash, so their Maxi, honestly, does not stop you from breaking, well, stop you from making your board, and they don't have any help to breaking your board. Like, they don't necessarily run anything like an evenly matched or like a Raigeki, in which case sometimes your board, for example, like a lot of tier element boards, like they just can't end on crime because sometimes you don't have the RNG to like randomly mill a Scream and not have milled your crime, like kind of RNG, but yeah. If you don't have crime, evenly matched completely wipes your board, leaving you with only like maybe a Rook Kalos if you decide to keep Rook Kalos. Kind of depends how, you know, it's situational how it ends. But like if you instead had like a Drone Lockbird instead of like a Maxi, or you had, for example, evenly matched instead of Maxi, it can just generally be better than if you had Maxi. It also depends on the list, of course, because you still need the payoff for the Maxi. So like if your opponent does all their searches and sets up a board that's too strong for you to deal with your engine, and you're not running any going second cards, then you should have just trolled your opponent from the start. So you should just had Drone Lockbird instead of Maxi to begin with. Or like maybe a Dimension Shifter. Like you could have had Dimension Shifter and like, I guess, I don't know, Lancia or something. You could have had those, Chaos Hunter, whatever. It's situational, of course, if your opponent does run something that's affected by those, but that might be potentially better. And of course, Infinite Impermanence is one of the strongest like cards that you can play right now. So if I, for example, normal summon Girsu, my opponent can easily imperm me there, and then what can I do against Infinite Impermanence in this situation? Well, there's only one play that is like reasonable to me, and that is to cross out Infinite Impermanence. And there is no other way to deal with like an Infinite Impermanence, but whereas with like Maxi, instead of having like one of cross out and having to run like Impermanence myself, so that's like 4 main deck slots, all I have to do to deal with Maxi is run 3 of Ash Blossom and 2 of Called By, and that handles Maxi most of the time. And my odds of drawing like one of the cards that counter Maxi is nearly double what you have of actually just getting Maxi, right? And of course, Infinite Impermanence is not hard once per turn either, so like, There's also the idea, I guess, that you can maxi draw into multiple copies of Infinite Impermanence, but Infinite Impermanence still has to be drawn early no matter what. And drawing all three of them early is actually pretty ridiculous and pretty unlikely to happen. But if it does, I guess Maxi's pretty good in that situation, I guess. But like Chaos Ruler's pretty good if you mill like 5 tier names, isn't it? Like 5 different tier names and like tier cards in general. Like there's no point of worrying about that too much. But yeah, Imperm, of course, that would be like assuming you are going second with Maxi and you draw into Infinite Impermanence. That's very good because your end board currently, well, your field currently is completely empty and you can just keep using your Infinite Impermanences like bam, 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 Infinite Impermanence, Infinite Impermanence. But if you draw Infinite Impermanence, of course, you can always drop Infinite Impermanence fast enough. So in this case, let's say our opponent is playing like something with Gyusu. It doesn't really matter what. So we'll normal summon Gyusu, and then you can drop Infinite Impermanence instantly, and there's only one of Crossout to deal with this, but assuming you drop Maxi against your opponent, then first things first, you'll now know if your opponent has Ash Blossom or Called By, okay? And let's assume generously here that they do not, and you resolve Maxi, and you now cannot, it is impossible really for you to just, well, I guess they probably summoned Girsu off of Harpor, so you'd probably chain Maxi to that. So if you draw an Ash Blossom here, I guess, you can Bloss on the Girsu, I guess, because they'll happen in next chain when it triggers the normal special summon effect to send a card. But whatever. If you draw into Infinite Impermanence here, you can also do that, but that would have to be the first summon, so that's like about 33 in 35, which is not that likely to get immediately on the first summon. And let's say it's normal summon Girsu though, then it's significantly worse. So like this would likely be a Mech Knight then, or it's still Orcus and they just normal summon Girsu, I guess. Then instead, there is no chance of you just randomly drawing Imperm if you don't have it in hand already. And then they can just use Girsu's effect to summon like a token, and then boom, all 3 copies of your Imperm are dead no matter when you draw them now. So like an Effect Veiler might perhaps be better. But Effect Veiler also has like a caveat that like Imperm doesn't in situations where your opponent doesn't give you a monster, right? You can hold your Imperm to use it with like an evenly match. So if your opponent has like, for example, an Abyss Hot Red, you can like Imperm Abyss Hot Red, go battle, and then activate evenly match, and that obliterates your opponent's board pretty much, right? But you can't do the same play with like an Effect Veiler, and Effect Veiler also does not have a hard once per turn, so you can just drop like Effect Veiler as you draw them onto your opponent to try to stop them. I mean, there's no other thing you can do with Effect Veiler because it's only activatable during your opponent's main phase. So yeah, that's kind of how that goes. So you can't really do the same like play. You can't like Effect Veiler evenly unless you do it like turn 3, I guess. But I mean, you're probably going to die in battle phase if you're passing on air, like, because I don't see in what other world you would do Effect Veiler evenly. But anyways, if instead of having like Maxi, you had the hand trap to start like evenly, or not evenly, like Imperm or Ash Blossom Joy Spring, or maybe Drone Lockbird even, Effect Veiler, whatever, then you could stop the whole like line of play before it even happens, and you don't have to draw into anything. So with Maxi, if we go ahead and use Maxi, we have to draw into like Imperms, Effect Veiler, Ash Blossom, whatever other hand traps you run. And then we would have to use those on our opponent as they are setting up their board. But this just means they actually not only have a chance to set up, but they can set up. And that's assuming generously that your Maxi does resolve, of course. So if our opponent, of course, starts setting up their board, after a certain point, like, your negates won't really work. Like, for example, let's say our opponent does normal summon Moyi and then special summon Longwan. Okay, what exactly are you able to negate here with any of the cards in your list here? Like, if you draw into Nibiru, that's good and all, but your Imperm and your Drone Lockbird, they're, like, effect failure, whatever, it's too late for this, and you can draw into them, doesn't matter. They will just, like, make their, end board monsters and just pass back to you. And that's kind of how it'll go, right? If, assuming, like, you don't draw into, like, the hand trap soon enough, then you might just have Engine. And I mean, worst case scenario, let's say your opponent does, like, Verte Degda, and then boom, you get Scythe locked. Did you happen to draw, like, Called by Infinite Impermanence? If you did not, then I guess you lose on the spot, because you are now getting Lingering Floodgated from your extra deck, and that's kind of just how that could potentially go if you max seed, right? But if you imperm, you can just imperm on Verte, for example, and then they have no way to trigger Degda, you know? So your opponent is less able to do anything at all if you simply drop, like, a hand trap that like just stops them, you know, like Infinite Impermanence, Effect Veiler, Ash Blossom, whatever. And of course, keeping in mind that these cards are more likely to resolve than Maxi. Like, for example, Infinite Impermanence is the prime example where you only have, like, Crossout, and then we won't really even bother considering Crossout for these other cards, because, like, are you going to really be able to cross out Effect Failure? There's a good chance the answer is actually just a straight up no. So we won't really bother considering that, right? So if we drop, like, a Droll Lockbird, drop Effect Failure, Ash Blossom, Joe Spring, your most likely answer is not going to be Crossout, is more likely going to be Called by the Grave. And there are a lot of people that aren't playing Crossout right now anyways, so whatever. If we drop, like, any of these cards, for example, like Effect Veiler, Droll Lock, Ash Blossom, your opponent has to have Called by, or generally they can't make their play. Whatever play they might be going for, like whatever kind of combo they're trying to resolve, it's just not gonna happen, my guy, you know? This, of course, also goes for, like, Tearlament. So, like, a prime example of this kind of phenomenon is if we go ahead and look at how Maxi interacts with, like, for example, Branded or Tearlament, which are both, like, I guess, technically combo decks, right? There's no denying that. And they're meta ones, so Maxi is supposed to keep them in check, surely, right? So, of course, we'll look at Tearlament first. So, let's say we do Tearlament, right? So, the normal play, well, that we'll just go for is, like, normal summon Rhino, send Merly, and then we'll shuffle back Merly effect, and then you'll chain to that with, like, a Maxi. And this, we won't even have to consider, I guess, that, but I guess it's worth mentioning that Maxi, of course, if you don't activate it, well, if you activate it during the main phase, you can get hit by a Triple Tactics Talent, and that's not the best necessarily, but it's not the worst either, I guess. It kind of depends, you know, but yeah. You can activate, well, you can give your opponent a chance to activate Triple Tactics Talent. But yeah, anyways, continuing on. They already know you used Maxi, of course, so they can stop immediately on Kick Kalos and just add Salik and pass. Like, set Salik pass. And they still have 4 cards in hand. So likely hand traps, or it can be, like, other tier stuff. And now you'll have to contest with, like, potentially, like, Tearlament Salik, and then, like, the Kick Kalos will do the milling and stuff. And then you'll have to contest with potential, like, Rukalos, potential Predaplant, Dragostapelia, and then, like, the Ishizu, like, millers and shufflers that might potentially allow your opponent to extend and stuff. That is assuming, of course, that you're Maxi, as I always have to, like, really drill this into you guys, I guess, that your Maxi has to resolve first. So Ash Blossom and Called By. 3 of Ash Blossom, 2 of Called By. None of those are in your opponent's hand. Alright. So then, boom, your opponent resolves their cards. Huzzah. They'll resolve kick colors and stuff. They can potentially have Happiness, hand traps, whatever. Orange, Heralds of the Orange Light, yeah. They can have all of those, and they can drop these and just play on your turn, so. That Maxi just went completely 1-for-1 and did nothing. But if you just impermed the kick Kalos, there's a good chance they actually have to just pass because they can't do the search, and they can't do the special summon of Tearlament monster in their hand either, assuming they had like Merlee to begin with. That's just no longer an option for your opponent, and they'll likely have to pass on just kick Kalos, and there's a good chance they just have like more or less air. Well, I mean, in that case, they had 3 of Salik, so they could have just set Salik as well anyway, so. Yeah, that's a bit of misery, but what can you do? The best card that you could have against your opponent is, like, evenly matched, and your opponent, if they have no crime, boom, the entire end board is gone, and they're just screwed. That's all you can really hope for. But then, let's say you have Maxi once again, and you're against branded. So let's say our opponent does like normal summon a Luber, add branded fusion, so nothing to Maxi yet, and then when you do Maxi, boom, branded fusion chain 1, Maxi chain 2, and then your opponent summons Lubellion and then Mirror Jade in that order, and they'll also, of course, like dump Tragedy to grab add Libitum, and then they have like a Luber, Tragedy, whatever in circulation. And of course, this is technically just a 1-card combo with just normal summon a Luber, right? Then I guess Mirror Jade would banish either itself or a Luber, doesn't really matter. I think Mirror Jade banish itself could potentially be better here, and then they will Albion grab branded fusion, and you draw twice, so it's basically Pot of Greed, and you have 7 cards for turn 2. And yeah, that's what you have. And what you're going to play against is, you're going to play against branded in red, summon Guardian Chimera, which in this case is just going to be pop 1 card, you know, destroy 1 card, and then draw 2, which they will likely try to use to draw into hand traps. And then there's also, of course, summon back Mirror Jade with add Libitum effect, and then Mirror Jade effect, and then Mirror Jade's destruction effect, and then the hand traps that will slow you down, making it not possible to lethal them, and then getting hit by Mirror Jade's destruction effect, blanking your board. And then, yeah, that's about it, I guess. Also, worth mention is they'll drop a second Albion into the graveyard, allowing them to grab branded fusion. Again, doing the whole thing again next turn, right? So all of that is likely going to happen, and what are you going to do about this? You just drop Maxi, but instead you could have had, like in this case, you don't know that they didn't have branded fusion, but if you had infinite impermanence on a Luber, that would have stopped everything, and they just end on hand traps and a Luber, which is essentially nothing. Or you could have Ash Blossomed on branded fusion, in which case they also end on nothing, but instead you would Maxi instead of either of those. So yeah, I guess that's how it goes. And you could have just had like some form of negation to stop like branded fusion, like from either coming out, or like to stop your opponent from setting up that end board, keeping in mind that this only special summons like twice. Is Maxi that great here? No, not really. And let's even go with, like, for example, Eldlik. If you Maxi Eldlik, Eldlik actually does some special summoning, like they'll special summon Eldlik. Like, we're talking, of course, like the most powerful variants of these lists, like with full-on stun Eldlick, with full-on like branded with like 3 branded fusion tier elements at their like full power and master duel, right? So if we go ahead and consider special summon Eldlick with like Scarlet, and then like Conquistador special summon. So first off, you're only getting one draw. It's kind of hard to do anything about this unless you let me think. Yeah, there's no way to go about this. Scarlet Sanguine is not limited to like just the main phase. So if you in your own standby, like let's say you have psychic abilities and know that your opponent like sets 5 or 4 cards to pass, right? That they're playing Eldlick. You have psychic abilities, so you're thinking, aha, I will simply Maxx in standby, right? To get all of my draws, and then boom, your opponent activates Scarlet Sanguine Chain 2, and then they'll later just activate Conk. And then maybe hack. So you draw 2. And you don't get the draw off of the Scarlet Sanguine. But of course, like, if your opponent activates Scarlet Sanguine and then, like, Conk, right? You're going to have to Maxx after Eldlick serves Scarlet Sanguine, so you're only drawing, like, once. Assuming they're like, summoning Hakuero at all. Aside from that, you're just getting hit by, like, Skill Drain. And, like, Rivalry. And Gozen. And Summon Limit. And Anti-Spell. And also, like, Imperial Order. Yeah. That's kind of how that'll go. And keep in mind, like, off of this one draw, that a lot of people were only playing, like, between 1 to 4, like, backer removal cards. So you're either doing, like, 3 Lightning Storm, 1 Duster, or you are doing, like, 1 of Duster. Alright, so now you have a, like, 1 in 34 chance of drawing into your, Harpy's Feather Duster in order to maybe win the game, considering that your 1 of Duster has the same odds of being like drawn as your opponent having like a 1 of Imperial Order. Yeah, that's pretty rough. And of course your opponent has like Pot of Extravagance, so they can just extrav, and there's a good chance they just drew into IO off of that just randomly. Also, they have Solemn Judgment as well as a 3 of. So what does Maxx do for you there? Nothing. Against Eldlick, this is literally just an upstart goblin. But if you were going first with this, bro, still an upstart goblin. And, of course, if you start with Maxx is essentially a brick. Just as with, like, any hand trap, they're somewhat like a brick, because they don't, like, help you with your combo. Except with Sprite, I guess you can normal summon Maxx broken. So, normal Maxx, special summon a Sprite monster. Great. Yeah, I'm sure that's good. But anyways, if you have Infinite Impermanence, does Infinite Impermanence, like, help you do, like, your Tearlament combo or your, like, Floowandereeze combo or anything? Like, of course not. This is, like, something completely different. You can just set aside this and not even, like, consider this. Unless you're playing something like DD, in which case you're using, like, nearly all your spell trap zones, you have to consider, like, if I have to pop, like, my own card to make room for Infinite Impermanence, but that's, like, a different thing entirely. So either way, on the first turn, usually your hand traps are, like, mostly dead in the form of setting up your, like, board. So your opponent can, like, hand trap you, and then you can hand trap them back the next turn. That's kind of how it goes. So in those cases, if you, instead of having hand traps, you just had you had extenders instead, or like additional starters or something like that, like, I don't know, an E-Telly or something to summon like Xiamen, then that would be better than Infinite Impermanence. Being able to set up your board and all. And of course it also matters, like, if, like, with Maxx, if your opponent has any going second cards or hand traps to draw into in the first place. Like, if your opponent only has evenly matched, what are the odds that your opponent has 2 evenly matched? Not that high. How about Infinite Impermanence with evenly matched? Also not that high, and it also depends how far you extend. Of course, and you have hand traps as well yourself, and all this. So the decks that are hurt most by Maxx actually are more inefficient engines, just in general. Like, any kind of deck with inefficient engine will suffer the most. So, like against Elblick, this does nothing. Well, I guess this is pretty easy to establish, right? And against Zodiac, yeah, I can normal summon a Zodiac and then just go Dryden Pass. Lovely. So a good amount of meta decks just are not super affected by like Maxi anyways. But anyways, let's go back to this, and let's say we are playing, I don't know, something like really crappy like Gen X. I have to do a billion summons just to end on anything. And in fact, you can throw like almost Dragon Link into this territory as well. How many like summons does Dragon Link have to do before they set up like some kind of negate? It's quite a few, honestly. Because the normal line of going like Striker and then like going into Romulus is like 5 summons already. And at that point, they have yet to set up a single negate. We haven't even considered going into like using our rocket field spell to summon our copy of Tracer. We have not gone that far yet. And even when we get that far, that's like what is that, like 5-6 summons, maybe more? And you have yet to set up a single point of interaction, and your opponent already has like a second hand essentially. So in that case, I guess yeah, your deck's not doing as well, but it's like kind of case by case. There are decks that are more affected, less affected by Maxi. So with Gen X, you're doing essentially nothing, and you're going to summon like a billion times to end on like nothing. And your opponent's going to have a lot of cards to be able to trade for your like nothing. You're like, yeah. Anything? Nope. I don't see any useful effects. Let me real quickly just look through these. I haven't really read this any of these Gen X cards. I don't know. I assume maybe. Actually, no. I don't think they can quick synchro. Maybe Gen X was just not really the play to analyze here, huh? But in general, if we summon like a billion times and end on not that many negates, sure, that's alright. But are we going to be doing that? No. A good amount of the time you're setting up some kind of floodgate or some kind of like strong interaction that your opponent wants to stop anyway, so in that case Maxi won't stop it, and it's detrimental, and it has like a different kind of value. Like if we have like more extenders to play through like our opponent's boards, Maxi's good for that, and you have like potentially board breaking stuff. But like if your opponent literally sets like, let's say I just set skill drain, okay? And my opponent doesn't even have back removal in their deck innately, right? So no like dusters or lightning storms or whatever. And I just summon like a billion times doing my combo, and I actually even get Nibiru'd, and then I just activate simply skill drain, and my opponent doesn't have Raigeki or anything to clear my like Nibiru token. And of course, they find out I have skill drain when they do their normal summon. Like for example, normal summon Moyi. And then boom, I flip skill drain, and then I will attack for game with like my a billion attack defense points Nibiru token. And then my opponent will just like lose off of that, you know? Like they're blowout like floodgate cards that you can't really deal with that well. And you can make no play, and of course like assuming you were able to get into your like end board and stuff, that means they don't have any hand traps aside from for maybe duplicates or just not activatable ones. If they have going second cards, they might not be resolvable either, so that's rough. So for example with Nature Runic, you do like your runic stuff, you do like your discard for Hugin, like let's say you do like tip, add Fountain, or tip add something else, and then you use that card to summon Hugin, discard one, and then grab Fountain or whatever. Doesn't really matter the order too much for me, but I guess the best one is just tip, grab Fountain, use a different runic spell, and then you draw 3 because you discard another runic spell, and then you do like normal summon Naturia Camellia, and then you have Mole Cricket in hand. You special summon Mole Cricket using the Naturia Blessing, and then you make like Naturia Beast, and then boom, Raigeki and stuff. Duster, that doesn't work because of Hugin. Yeah, I mean, I guess you can Naturia Beast to negate as well, but yeah, Hugin's a card that exists as well, so Destruction, not really gonna happen. And Mole Cricket can summon itself back to bring out like Naturia Camellia, and then Naturia Camellia can special summon Naturia Sunflower. So how many special summons is this? It's only 3. So would you be able to play against this off with it just like, I don't know, like about 7 engine cards and then something else, I guess? Because if you do Maxx C, discard Maxx C, you're at 4 cards, draw 3, you're at 7, so you have 8 cards in hand to deal with this. And then of course like they have their runic cards still in hand, so did Maxx C do a whole lot for you there? Maybe. It depends if you have any like going second cards that are blowout, like evenly matched, that can win you the game on the spot. And you're more likely to have like evenly matched now because you drew all those cards potentially, right? Well, if you have evenly matched to begin with, I guess. If you don't have evenly matched, yeah, you're just going to have to try to play through this, and your deck is likely going to be banished for like, if you have, let's pretend magically that Duster did out their board, like their whole board. Now you have a 1 of Duster and you had a relatively low chance to draw it. You just drew like, I don't know, what was it, like 4 cards? So one of those cards had to be Duster, right? But when your opponent starts resolving their like runic cards, it is probably more likely for your like 1 of to get banished than for you to draw it later on, like for like turn 4 or 5. Does Maxx C do a lot for you there? No. What would have done more for you is like Ash Blossom Joy Spring to stop like your opponent from potentially, well, I guess the best time for you in this case to like drop the Ash Blossom is probably like on the Fountain draw. That's probably your best time to drop the Ash. But aside from that, if you had like an Imperm, definitely drop that on the like Hugin, I guess. That sounds good to me. And with that combo in particular, the one I mentioned, they like either have like 1 or 2 fountains, I guess. The variant that uses like 2 fountains is pretty brutal. But I'm getting a little distracted here. So all of these decks here, you're going into a second with Maxx C. That's what it about does for you. So one of the decks like that it would do more for you is like Sword Soul. Sword Soul. Okay. So like for example, if we have Sword Soul, normal summon Moyi, infinite impermanence, boom. That a lot of the time can just stop your opponent entirely from doing anything, and they just literally have to Moyi pass. And that's all they have. But on the flip side of this, you know, instead of this, you can drop like Maxx C, and then boom. Let's say we do normal summon Moyi, and then summon the token, that's 1, and then Chizao, that's 2 summons. And then grab Blackout Pass, that's like the minimum that your opponent can do, I guess. And then they have Pop 2 and 1 Monster Negate. And also they drew a card. So now they have like 5 hand cards still. And you have to contest with Chizao and Blackout. But aside from that, your opponent can just do the full combo, and then let's say they go Moyi, Sword Soul Grandmaster Chizao, and then Baron with Blackout Pass. That's pretty standard, I would say. So let's say your opponent does this, then what do you have to show for this? Let's see. They will summon what? Okay, Moyi is one summon, but that's not a special summon, so token special summon. Yugioh special summon, so that's 2, and then Long Wan. How does Long Wan work? Special summon this card from your hand, then you can special summon one social token. So Long Wan, you it special summons twice, unlike Cypher Gamma, which only counts as one summon because it happens at the same time. So this is 1, 2 draws, 3 draws, 4 draws, and then Baron is 5 draws. So you still have to contest with Baron, Omni negate, and then Yugioh negate, and then Blackout to pop 2, and then your opponent's like many hand cards because they're playing Sword Soul and they get the draw off of Moyi for no reason. You have to still contest with likely like 4 cards in your opponent's hand, which 1 or 2 of is likely to be a hand trap. So that's great. And assuming your opponent does have, like, for example, a Maxi, of course, if they draw into Ash Blossom and Joe Spring, they can only activate 1 Ash Blossom, no matter how many Ash Blossoms they draw. And if they draw into Infinite Impermanence, it is completely not activatable, of course. So, in my opinion, that's worth mentioning. And it does essentially nothing for your opponent until the next turn. For Infinite Impermanence in particular, this is only, like, useful on, like, what is it? 1, 2, 3, turn 4, because they have to set it on turn 3, and then it can finally be activated again on, like, turn 4. So, yeah, Imperm is not that hot, but it's such a strong card. And the typical hand trap lineup you'll be seeing, like, nowadays that most people run is, like, Blossom 3, Maxi 3, Imperm 3, Called by 2. That's like the like hand trap stuff you're running, I guess. So that's what people are running, and yeah. If you have like some way like Yusu, for example, to like stop like Infinite Impermanence from affecting you, or like with Dino you have Lost World, for example, then your opponent can literally only hit you with a single Ash Blossom and Joe Spring at some point. Like, yeah. And if they were to run, like, for example, other cards, like, we'll just do the demonstration here, I guess. So let's say you want to run cards to grab off of Maxi. Depends how hard your opponent, like, extends, but by the time you can grab, like, a Forbidden Droplet or Evenly Matched, your opponent probably has a pretty strong end board, right? Like, for example, these board breakers are honestly just generally can be not enough. With the Omni negate back rows, you can like just negate droplet as hard once per turn. So if you draw multiple, they're dead. And then Evenly Matched, of course, is pretty good, but depends what your opponent sets up exactly, I guess. For example, with let's see. For example, with Dino, is Evenly Matched really going to matter that much? Maybe, maybe not. It depends, I guess. Let me think. Actually, no. Evenly is impossible to resolve because you can't crash the Lost World token. Yeah, so that doesn't work in that case, I guess, but whatever. But aside from that, like, if you can resolve the Evenly, potentially, you're doing better, but you would probably need to pair both, like, Droplet and Evenly to be able to resolve Evenly, because an end board that isn't, like, garbage, you know, just an end board people would play to be competitive, right, would usually have some form of Spell Trap negate, if not an Omni negate, and they would use that on Evenly Matched, so you would need 2 Evenly Matched to, like, somewhat break through, which you won't necessarily have. And that is assuming they actually don't have a really good way to deal with Evenly, so pretty rough. And there's also like Lingering Floodgates and like a bit of a Towers monster, like Psychic and Punisher, for example. You might not have a way to out Psychic and Punisher, even if you drop an Evenly, so it's still suspect. And of course you need to run Evenly Matched in the first place, so just for example, we'll just throw in Sword Soul cards for you guys to see like how efficient your engine needs to be and how compact it has to be, right? So we'll do 1 Blackout, 3 of Incredible Ecclesia, you want, of course, 3 of Sword Soul Emergence, and then we want, like, Kaya, long one at maxed out copies, probably. And let's see what we're looking at here. Yep, we're doing better. And then we'll grab our 10 Ys. Probably want triple Ashuna, and then, like, double Vishuddha, and then triple Adhara, and then this puts us at 40, and we haven't put in, like, anything like Protos. And already look at our hand trap lineup. Our hand trap lineup is literally just Ash Blossom, Geospring, and Infinite Impermanence. That's all we have, and actually, this list is pretty bad. There's a very blatant issue here. I think we don't have enough Worms in our main deck, unironically, for our engine, so we're going to, like, end up bricking a lot of the time. Yeah, so here we have Incredible Ecclesia, so it looked good, like, but then you realize this, right? Incredible Ecclesia, our engine doesn't work here with just Ecclesia. Ecclesia is not a 1-card combo. And then here we have Ashuna and, like, double Sword Soul Emergence. And evenly matched. This hand is just, like, kind of just Omega unlucky. Nothing we can do about this, but I guess we would probably add Moyi and just link this off with, like, a Monk. So here we just have long one, Vishuddha, Emergence with Maxi and Nibiru. So Nibiru, of course, is really, really bad to have going first. So this hand, not that bad or great going like first or second. It kind of depends how crazy our opponent opened. As we do, and then boom, look, Moyi, no Worm. And Ecclesia, nothing we can do with Ecclesia. So all we can do is like set Imperm and Droplet and pray. If our opponent has like some way to unironically deal with this, like if they just drop Duster and then they special summon like a Rukelis, what is a guy to do here? Nothing, I guess. And then here we have like Kaya Adhara. And we have Ashuna, Vishuddha. I mean, this still ends on at least like Baron Chizao Pass, but like, yeah, not enough Worms, honestly. So we're ending up like very bricked, like in random hands. And we're left like very vulnerable. Like here, if we get ashed on Emergence, we literally have to pass with like Forbidden Droplet and Maxi. And of course, there is like a higher chance that our opponent has Ash Blossom and Called By than we have Maxi, and here we have Maxi, so there's a good chance Maxi doesn't even resolve, and boom, now we just have Forbidden Droplet and a Dream. And of course, like, let's see what we draw here. Since we set Forbidden Droplet, assuming we haven't activated it yet, we can't even activate like the Imperm ourselves in this case. And then boom. How long till we get to Ash Blossom? So here. So how many summons was this? So 5 cards across, 4 cards down. This is 16. 16 summons until you get like an interaction from Maxi. Alright, like, do you really think your opponent can't kill you after doing like 16 summons? And keep in mind, you didn't get Nibiru here. I mean, getting Nibiru at around like, I don't know, let's say, what is this? 19 summons before like you get Nibiru. Do you think you're not like long dead before 19 summons? Or your opponent has no answer for Nibiru after 19 summons? Like, they summon 19 times. Like, what? Yeah. Yeah. That's pain. And then there is actually a risk with like there are certain decks that can just completely ignore a lot of the cards you have here. So, for example, with like Danger Dark World, go ahead and Maximi. I will deck you out with absolute certainty. So, you can drop Nibiru on me, I am okay. I'm still fine, because you'll probably only have Nibiru after I finish, like, really getting my stuff going. my graveyard and field is going to be set up, assuming I don't have Appaloosa yet, and you nib me, I am still fine. If you try to imperm me, there are very few targets for you to imperm, but if there were, there's a decent chance that I already gave you Ceruli. So what are you imperming? Probably nothing, really. And then you have one Ash Blossom and Joy Spring. But yeah, I actually will likely draw like 20 to 30 times with my Danger Dark World deck if I get the ball rolling, right? So none of this matters. So all that matters now is if you have board breakers. That is it. So like evenly match, forbidden droplet, whatever. So for evenly match specifically, because a lot of people actually are not playing droplet right now, but we just put it in for the sake of it. If you go ahead and drop evenly matched on me, I actually have a counterplay for this, you know? A bit of the counterplay. So first off, Raigeki is not an obstacle because Muckraker will protect my board from destruction effects. But aside from that, we have Garafa, Dragon Overlord of Dark World. So with this bad boy, if you try to evenly me, I'll just discard a card and I'm just perfectly chilling. So yeah, in general, nothing is really going to be done to me with this. And let's say I'm playing like the sick in the head version, you know? So I'm playing like Danger Dark World, and I go ahead, I can tribute summon Invisil over like Dagda. Like that, this is really psychopathic, but then boom, all spell cards cannot be activated if I cared, and then boom, if I tribute over Dark Fiend, which would be the majority of my deck, you know, Danger Dark World cards are all Dark Fiends, no more traps can be activated. Boom bada ba pow. And you're screwed. That's kind of how it can go potentially. And this is a nerfed fairy for whatever reason. I don't know what Sky Scourge cards are, but yeah, that's just a funny interaction I thought. Was kind of worth mention. Well, not really worth mention. I just wanted to mention it. Alright, I admit it. This interaction's trash, but if I really get the ball rolling on Danger Dark World, doing this, perfectly possible. So yeah. What are you going to do with Maxi here? Not much. So in general, Maxi does its best when you have like really bad hands. Yeah, that's about it. That's how I feel really. So I don't know, like let's say I have like one of the worst Blackwing hands. So we'll do something like really crap. So let's say every hand card in my like hand is just like horrendous, like a horrendous brick. So we only have Vata, and then we have like I don't know, let's say Vayu, and then we have Sudri, not Sudri. We have Zephyros in hand as well. And then I don't know. Black Whirlwind. So we have to like, well actually not Black Whirlwind. Black Whirlwind is too good. And would I have Zephyros? Not even. Let's just say I have like just triple Black Whirlwind and like Vata with like, I don't know, Vayu. So all I can do is like normal summon Vata and then Vata effect to like special summon a copy of Blackwing Dragon, and I end on just Chinook Pass. Actually, it's not even that bad. That only summoned once. Hold up, that's not what I'm looking for. So, wait, the other one. Alright, so let's say we actually have instead Vata with let's see, where is it? What was the card called? Black Feather Whirlwind. So here we'll just like normal Vata, special summon, and maybe we have like Whirlwind so we can add Chinook as well, but maybe not. So then we can special summon Zephyros by returning Black Feather Whirlwind, activate Black Feather Whirlwind again. So anyways, the end board is going to be more or less like either Blackwinged Assault Dragon or a Full Armor Master. Like it's just one monster and like a Chinook negate more or less. So we have a choice with our like extra deck monsters, and we can potentially end on like 1 or 2 Blackwinged Assault Dragon as well. Okay, so how many times did we have to summon for it? Let's see. So this is a normal summon, special summon, Blackwing Dragon, special summon back Avata. So that's 2. Special summon Zephyros, special summon extra deck monster. So we're special summoning our copy of Boreas Storm, and then we special summon the end board monster. So that's like 6 summons for like 1 to 2 points of interaction. It's like in that Giga Scuffed hand, our opponent now has like doubled their hand cards, and they will like have like 11 cards for the next turn. And you know what? If we use our interactions well enough, our opponent might not be able to do anything with their cards. That's crazy, isn't it? So let's say we're playing like Sword Soul, for example, here. And let's say we just didn't get any copies of Ecclesia because unlucky, I guess. And we end on, I don't know, like Blackwinged Assault Dragon with Full Armor Master. We have Shranga in the graveyard, Chinook on the field because we summoned it back off of Blackfeather Woodland. Oh, actually, if we consider that, that's 7. Well, that sucks, but alright, I guess you have 7. So, normal summon Moyi. Okay, then I can go ahead. Use Chinook effect, send it from field, negate Moyi. Okay. And then you probably have Longwan. And then special summon Longwan. Alright. I will pop your token with the effect of my Sharnga. And I guess you could have like done stuff with Vish, but it wouldn't have really mattered, honestly, and boom, you would have lost because you didn't have any like going second card still. So even in those situations, not the worst, but of course if you just drop evenly, I'm doing like significantly worse, but it's probably still like not lost on the spot after evenly, I guess. Depends on the exact list. Like, how many summons do you have to do with like Salamangreat to like end on a negate? Or like Math Mech? I don't know, it's quite a few. But they're like Math Mech, what's it called? The Math Mech like trap. My brain's completely rotted right now. But that basically allows them to trish you and whatnot, right? And that's like a 1-card combo. So that's fairly strong. Even for like 1-card combos, like they can be stopped pretty easily, which makes them like pretty easy to deal with like an Ash Blossom, Joe Spring. Or you can Max E to accrue enough advantage that you can just keep throwing cards until they don't have no more negates. I guess. You can think of it that way. It gets a little more complicated than that, but with Maxx E, it evens out the playing ground a bit because, like, for example, if we did the old Halkdon combo with like the adventure Tenyi stuff or whatever, do you know how many times that you like actually summon like with that combo? Well, it's a lot, obviously, right? But there's also the fact that honestly, Maxi wasn't that likely to resolve because 3 of cross out. So, yeah, that's like 2 called by, 3 cross out, 3 Ash Blossom Joyous Spring, so that's like 8 cards that stop Maxi from resolving. But like, let's say it does resolve, right? You have to consider that your opponent drops like Colossus on you. They have like back row, Omni negates, they have Baron and stuff, right? So, unless you have, like, insanely strong, hard-going second, like, anti-combo cards already at your disposal, like, namely, Sphere Mode Droplet. Well, actually, Droplet's not good enough, unless you discard a trap, but even if you do discard a trap, you still have to contend with their back row Omni negates. But you'd have to, like, Sphere Mode their board to, like, break it. Aside from, like, literally Sphere Mode, it doesn't really matter what you draw. Like, if we look at my hand here, even if I drew, like, Droplet, that is not enough to break the board. Like, if I special summon, like, a Vishuddha, make a Monk, what is that going to do for me? If I don't have, like, multiple cards in my hand, like, you're probably not gonna break it. Assuming, like, you let them build their board, right? Aside from that, you just really have to try to stop Hulk which is hard because, you know, the adventure package, right? They likely have set up Griffin before like they even set up Hulk. So yeah, that's incredibly rough. So I don't know, maybe drop like a D shifter or something. What are you going to do against that? Does Maxi really make or break anything there? Not really. If they dropped Maxi on you going second, I guess that would feel a little bad, but look, man, after they set up their end board, you either have sphere mode or you don't. That, you know, that's kind of how it goes. So, it might feel bad, but like getting hit by Maxi. But if you don't have like the board breakers to break your opponent's board, it doesn't matter like what flavor of like combo deck they're playing, you know? Whatever negate end board they're doing. If you don't have like board breakers, usually it's still not good enough. And this is like exemplified even more for like certain other situations. Because, for example, let's go back to this list here and let's just put in Droplet for funsies. So let's say our opponent actually sets up a really strong board and we maxied and none of our hand traps could really do anything against them. Unironically, yeah, this does happen. So, assuming you were going second, what are the most relevant cards in this deck? So we're going to draw through the majority of our deck. Like, we're just going to assume this is true, and let's assume Nibiru is not going to really be able to resolve for whatever reason, right? So we have Droplet. Our opponent can actually negate Droplet evenly. Our opponent actually still has, like, some answer for evenly, so unless we have two evenlies, it's not going to do much for us. And look at how much of our deck we have, and we still only have one evenly, even though we run 3, right? And we have one Imperm. Ash Blossom doesn't do much. Second Maxi doesn't do much. So what can we use to board break here? So we would probably want to maybe cycle through our Tenyis, so try to resolve Vishuda. Vishuda is just not going to work because they, for example, might pop the Monk, and then we can't do anything there. They negate Moyi. They negate Longwan. Now, what are you left with? Nothing. And this is assuming it's because our blowout cards are not strong enough. So if we had, like, Kaiju's thrown in, we'd be able to trade much more favorably. Notably with something like Sword Soul Blackout, if your opponent controls no arms, like let's say the only arm our opponent controls is, for example, Chizao, then if we Kaiju over like Chizao, that effectively gets rid of their Pop 2 effect, and it also gets rid of their Chizao, which is a monster negate, so that's like 3 different interactions they have with your cards just gone off the board, right? There are a lot of like end board monsters that are somewhat like that. So that can be advantageous too. So let's go with a pretty extreme example. Let's say our opponent is playing Drytron. So they literally have like 5 Omni negates because yes. And also they have a Solemn Judgment just because, you know, why not? That or they did that one disgusting combo that allows them to grab Imperial Order, you know? Well, I guess technically it wouldn't be available, but let's just play ball for a bit, you know? Why not? They negate Forbidden Droplet, and then nothing here actually can win you the game. Aside from that, like, Forbidden Droplet. And we drew all 3 Forbidden Droplet, and they're all, like, deadass useless. Or, like, a different perspective. Let's just say our opponent just made a 6k arrival, and they just passed on that. This doesn't out arrival. Nothing here actually outs arrival. So you're just going to slowly lose the game after this turn, assuming your opponent doesn't just make, like, access code next turn and kind of just rails you, you know? Yeah, it's just looking bad for you, even with, like, all these cards. Because we got a lot of duplicate cards that do the same thing, you know? Like, for example, with Taya and Moyi, they're both, like, your normal summons. With Long Wan, you just activate Long Wan once and you're done, and that's how you get into your Synchro 10s. And then all of your, like, Tenyis, basically, like, all of your copies of Ashuna and Vishuda, they just double down, and they're kind of just copies of Vishuda. You can try to make, like, Baxia, but I doubt you'll be able to get into Baxia in the first place, so there's that as well. Depends, like, if your opponent has, like, 5 cards that are all, like, straight up gas, for their end board's going to be probably too strong for, like, even, like, how many cards do we have here? We have, like, what was this? 26 cards? Yeah, 26 cards isn't going to be enough to break through. Like, it's just going to be completely possible that, and, well, completely impossible for you to break through. And we were pretty unlucky here. Like, even if they didn't do the kind of thing where we get hit by, like our opponent giving us a monster and we can activate the Imperm here. This Imperm, the best usage for this Imperm, since it was drawn so late, is just to trade with a negate. Like, we should like hit Baron with infinite impermanence before we start our plays next turn. And that's the best we can do with this infinite impermanence. And then maybe we'll try to resolve Forbidden Droplet. That's probably what we're hoping to do, I guess, and then evenly matched, if possible. Kind of depends what our opponent did, because there's some, like, endboards that are completely impossible to deal with here. So if we think of just, like, the Hulk Dagda combo from, like, around the same time when people were really playing Sword Soul, then we would have, for example, not even this many cards, so it would be, like, around up to here, to where, like, Taya is, I think, or maybe even Emergence, somewhere around here. And you would get Sight blocked. And your opponent would also control, like, a Baron and stuff, right? So, yeah, that would assume that, like, Maxx resolved in the first place as well. Which is pretty rough here. And honestly, in my experience, the majority of the time, Maxx is a non-factor to how the game goes. It's not determinative. Not determinative. Sometimes, like, your opponent can draw good off of Maxx, like, just Ash Blossom directly off the top, but if they just had Ash Blossom anyways, I mean, I was kind of screwed. Like, if that Ash Blossom did matter or not, right? So, that can sometimes matter, sometimes not matter, of course. But most of the time, Maxx was not game determinative, and your opponent can, like, even if they draw, like, the majority of their deck, still have, like, no play. Which is kind of crazy, but it is what it is. And usually, I think, doesn't Sword Soul also like to play, like, Desires and stuff? So, I don't know, I'd, like, drop, like, 3 Desires, and then it's, like... The list looks closer to this, and I don't think you actually run the nib, so I think, like, a Sword Soul list looks closer to this, actually. And you might swap, like, your ratios for Vishuda and Ashina, and you might want copies of Adhara or whatever, because Adhara gives you, like, a play going second, right? Or not going second. A play for, like, turn 3. Because if you banish, let's say, Longwan or Moyi for the effect of Chizao, you can add it back with Adhara. And that's cool, I guess, for you guys, sure. But, like, even if you, like, for example, Maxx, and let's say you're playing a dark deck and you get hit by Protoss. Like, let's say you're branded playing Maxx. Lingering Floodgate, what are you going to do against this? Literally nothing, I guess, right? If you're playing, I don't know, like, Tier Elements, and your opponent does Protoss on you, and your opponent summoned, like, 7-8 times, which is how many times I believe, like, Sword Soul has to, like, summon if they full combo and then make Protoss as well. That's about how many they do. And as you saw earlier, I drew, like, infinite impermanence way too late. It's like on, like, something dumb, like the 19th summon, 16th summon. We aren't even going to see the imperm here, right? No matter how much engine we have, it's not going to do anything. So I guess right now, we're just breaking down, like, most cases with Maxx. in my opinion. So like, usually when Maxi is resolving, you were going to lose anyways because your hand is usually just trash, or you're playing a list where if you got hit by like any hand trap at that stage, you were probably doomed anyways. You were doomed to fail, you know? Like, if you get hit by like Ash Blossom, Dimension Shift, or whatever, you just have like the called by or not. But if you get hit by Maxi, it's better for you honestly because you have 3 Ash Blossom and then 2 called by to deal with Maxi, and your opponent just goes -1 off of that, and you don't have to worry about Maxi for the rest of the turn as well, I guess, which is a plus. Like, if it matters for you, I guess. So you won't get hand trapped by like stuff drawn off Maxi. Yay. And then I guess, yeah, that's about it, really. If you get hit by, like, for example, Drone Lockbird, when you're playing, I don't know, Blackwing, for example, like, on your, after your first card, versus if you, like, Maxi and then draw Drone Lockbird later and then Droll your opponent, it's probably already too late and they have something for you. And if you just drop a negate, sometimes, like, Ash Blossom and Geospring, or, like, Imperm, your opponent just won't have, like, a play, right? And of course, like Maxi, instead of Maxi, we can just run more engine, or we can run, like, a more oppressive hand trap that is more game determinative, like Dimension Shifter, notably. So we just do something like this, double Dimension Shifter, and then put in Nibiru. Because, like, some of those combos I mentioned, of course, like, they can set up against Nibiru if it's drawn off Maxi, because the likelihood of you getting Nibiru soon enough, like, it is probably not going to happen, I guess, right? Like, if you get it on the 10th summon, there's a good chance, like, setting up Apollosa becomes, like, pretty reasonable around that point in time, or slightly before. But if you, like, drop, like, Nibiru instantly by having it in your hand to begin with, or, like, dropping Dimension Shifter, like, instantly, that can become much more unplayable for a lot of players, so this is just considerably stronger, I would say. If you have to consider going second as well, right? So here, this is pretty brutal, actually. And does matter what we draw into. Okay. Actually, no, it doesn't. You can normal summon Ecclesia, like, without even activating Desires. Normal summon Ecclesia, special summon Moyi, reveal Emergence. Yeah, you still have, like, somewhat combo. And you can grab, like, Blackout and stuff, and you're still, like, doing okay. And you have Shifter, of course, just resolved, and this doesn't even need to worry about, like, Desires. But, like, is Chengying lethal, actually, if we cheese out Chengying? Long one doesn't burn, right? Because it doesn't get sent to the graveyard? And you don't get Moyi draw either. I mean, either way, this is just so oppressive that if you tried to do a thing, right? Like, I don't know what you're doing, but let's say you just... Let's go normal summon Kaleido Heart and then chain 2 Dimension Shifter. You have to, like, send one of your 2 Element Girls to their death. And then your opponent just sets up, like, something like either, I don't know, Baron Chizao Chengying. You're down a card as the, like, I don't know, tier player here. And they'll do some, like, board breaking if you have some back row you tried to stop them with, and let's assume you were not successful. Then you're doing significantly worse, like, really, really bad. Because we can special summon Ecclesia here, and we can also grab, like, Moyi off of this if we want. We can grab Long One. And then there's, like, Desires as well. So, yeah, that's not doing so hot, you know? But, yeah, that's about all I've got for you guys. For, yeah. Well, I guess, I'll probably have to set up a big spreadsheet to really hammer this in for you guys. But, whatever. That's all I've got for you guys today, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye.